inti aħna biex bdejna dal-proġett, ċoħe wieħed wara li l-estejna l-RFP kellna 33 bidders worldwide.
Strina?
Mela, mill-Amerika sal-Awstralja, ġifieri kollha ltqajt magħhom. Titgħallem ħafna minnhom, ġifieri mbagħad tispiċċa li ġib baggage ta' idejat kompletament differenti minn dawn in-nies kollha. U hemmhekk tgħin ħafna lil sħabek biha, ġifieri ikun irid jisma' x'hu minn moħħu jibqa' kif iru. Tifhimni inti?
Importanti għax. Anke aħna jiena meta dħalt l-magazine kienet għadha Maltakom 1999 waħda mill-briefs tiegħi kienet li nibdlu il-billing system. Sal-billing system diġà kienet bought out. Kienet żviluppata minn kumpanija Franċiża li kienet sussidjarja ta' France Telecom. Però kellna ħafna problemi, apparti problemi ta' functionality. L-ewwel l-ikbar problema kienet li s-sistema kienet intiża biex taħdem in a monopolistic environment. U 1999 konna diġà qed immorru l-bogħod għax mill-monopolju għax it-telecommunications hawn Malta kienu se jiġu liberalizzati. U jiġifieri apparti dik l-ikbar problema li kellna li s-sistema was not good for a non-monopolistic environment. Kien hemm ħafna problemi anke ta' komunikazzjoni magħhom. Daw Franċiżi, allura bl-Ingliż anke jafu jitkellmu bl-Ingliż jippruvaw jevitaw li jitkellmu bl-Ingliż. Ħafna minnhom ma jafux bl-Ingliż, nista' maintenance tagħhom. Ġifieri kellna ħafna minn dawn il-problemi. U meta bdejt induru naqgħod u nara x'hemm fis-suq, kienu ħafna idejat, isma' di ħajba u nitkellem man-nies interni, isma' kieku aħna naqas nibdlu l-credit control tagħna, il-kunċetti ta' credit control. U again kif tgħid inti ħafna nies jalqu moħħhom u jkunu kontra idejat ġodda. Nakas waħda mill-problemi li kien hemm is-sistema l-antika kienet illi klient seta' ikollu 4-5 linji. Is-sistema l-antika kienet tibgħat kont tal-kull linja. Issa klient li jkollu 4 linji kien jiddeċiedi ħallas 2 linji, kontijiet ta' 2 linji, tnejn ma jħallashomx. Jekk tieħu credit control action fuq dak iż-2 linji u tagħmel restrictions fuqhom, da jiġi jitmella għax għandu 2 linji oħra jaħdmu. Il-konċetti tas-sistema ġdida kienet li inti għandek account wieħed, għandek 4 linji f'dak l-account, tirċievi invoice waħda, jekk ma tħallasiex, ħanimblokkalek kollox. U sakemm dawk l-idejat jidħlu fl-imħuħ tan-nies li jkunu mdorrijin jaħdmu modi differenti, it takes time. Kellna sal-CEO, każ kien iġab billi għandek klient qed igorġ. Għaliex da ħallas il-kont ta' żewġ konti ta' 2 linji. Kont illustration ma jistax ikun ħallas il-kont ta' 2 linji, għax għandna kont wieħed nibatulu. Ma jistax joqgħod jara da jekk irċeva kont ta' 100 euro mela għandi 40 euro fuq dawn 2 linji, 60 euro fuq 2 linji, l-oħra ħallas 40 euro. That doesn't work that way.
It happens. Ma diffiċli ħafna, meta tiġi biex tibdilja man-nies. Unfortunately kulħadd l-internal clients jibdew jaraw minn lenti differenti. U meta jkollok regular clients tiddihom ċertu weight u tibda
challenge sabiħ. I'm sure li tallim ħafna minn dal-proġett u ħadd itgħallem ħafna iktar. It's always a big challenge. How to do business process engineering and implement an ERP, it is always a feather in your cap. Huh? And I'm sure you're doing it. I'm sure you're doing it the right way.
Maybe. At least. Anyway.
Mela naħseb kulħadd jetaw ħlief. Għallu naħseb hawnx. Mela 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Good evening, kulħadd. Good evening, everybody. Alexandru doesn't understand what is, I think. I was having a nice conversation, perhaps you were following with Carmen, who's going through the phases of running a business process re-engineering and implementing an ERP at his workplace. So it's linked very, very much to the subject that we are doing. If you remember last week, we spoke about business process re-engineering, or the week before. My memory isn't that good, but we covered business process re-engineering. Carmen has gone through and is going through it in practice. Right? So supplementing his theoretical knowledge now, and his theoretical knowledge supporting what he is doing in practice. So you see that although we are doing a lot of theoretical work, a lot of theory, this theory has a place in our day-to-day lives. It has a place in our practical lives. Right? So it is very, very important that you get to grips with the theory that we are going through. Certain things, probably during your careers, especially if you further your careers in information systems, will become even more clear when you start practicing them, when you start seeing how they are applied in real life. I'm sure that Carmen is appreciating this. It is a huge challenge, right? I know I've passed through it, and it is a huge challenge, and that is why I lost all my hair. Do you still have your hair, Carmen? Because I can't see your picture.
It's in my face. Wait, right? You see
Hmm?
soon.
No need to switch on there, but I'm asking you whether you still. All right, okay. Yes. you're, you're walking my path. So I know the feeling. Anyway, today we're going to carry on the final few slides that we didn't have time to cover last week. Hopefully, we will not have the same technical problems this time around. I took care to just switch off half an hour ago and then switched on again. And I have just the few applications that I need so that I can make sure that there are no added stresses on my PC. So hopefully technology will not let us down this time around. Gavin has joined. Hi, Gavin. Good evening. All right.
Hi, sir. Good evening.
So we'll finish strategy and then we start off on another topic. Now, information system strategy. So far, we have seen how we can use information systems to create and sustain a competitive advantage. And in order to use information systems to help us sustain and obtain in the first place that competitive advantage, we need to have a clear, well-defined plan. How and when are we going to introduce information systems? In an organization, there will be the need to introduce more than one information system at a particular time or at the same time. But sometimes, first of all, because most of our IT departments are very low on resources. And secondly, because even the impact, the effect that implementing information systems has on our staff, we try to keep the implementation of systems at different times. Sometimes even the same system, we try to phase it out into a number of phases so that we keep the chaos that might result in implementing a new system, so that we will keep that chaos as manageable as possible. So if we can break a system down into phases, we normally phase it so that each phase can be as self-controlled as possible and easier to control from our side. Now, this well-defined plan of how and when to introduce information systems is known as an information system strategy. And the information system strategy has to be an enabler of the overall business strategy. We can't have an information system strategy on its own without referring to the overall business strategy. Information systems are there to enable the business, to enhance the business, to make sure that the business strategy is actuated. So we can't have an information system strategy that is apart from the business strategy. It has to be an enabler of the business strategy. It doesn't have to go a different direction, to go off at a tangent. Now, the IS strategy itself is enabled by an IT strategy. Right? So, IS, the information system strategy, is based on an information technology strategy. And on the next slide, you will see the relationship between these three strategies, between the business strategy, the information system strategy, and the IT strategy. So we start off by the business strategy. That is the first thing that has to be decided on by the organization. Now, obviously, it has to take into consideration the IT impact and potential of IT. Now, the business strategy is where is the business going and why? What are our objectives? That the business decisions. What are we going to do? What do we need to change? Now, the business strategy is going to drive our information system strategy. The business strategy is going to create a direction for the business. The information system strategy needs to know what is required in order to go in this direction, in order to achieve what the business strategy has set out. So information system strategy is business-based. What does the system want? The business want, sorry. What are the business objectives? It is demand-oriented. What is the business asking from us? What is it demanding from us? And it has to be application-focused. What systems do we need to build? What system do we need to have in place so that the business strategy can achieve its objectives? Now, the IS strategy will then this year, these are activities. What do we need to do? Tasks that need to be carried out. It is supply oriented. We are going to supply infrastructure and services to enable the IS strategy. It is technology focused. This is where we look at the technology. What is new on the market? What additional hardware do we need? And do we need to change?
Chance, do you still hear him, guys?
At one point, it went mute for a moment. In between, where you were discussing between the IS strategy and the IT strategy.
Okay, I'll repeat that.
Yes, please. Since I'm here, can I ask you a very quick question?
Yes, sure.
With regards to the IS strategy being demand-oriented, right? Would that, although the IS strategy is par and parcel, as we say, with the business strategy, is it correct to say that it also the demand-oriented trickles down to also what the market is demanding from the business?
What the market is demanding from the business will appear in the business strategy. So it will trickle down to the IS strategy, demand-oriented here. When I say the demands of the business, obviously, because the business is looking at the demands of the market as well.
Okay.
So demand-oriented will include the demands of the business that includes the demands of the market.
A second.
All right. So it's essentially a waterfall effect, sort of.
It is, yes. Okay. And that is why I said the IS strategy has to support business strategy. It has to enhance business strategy. Obviously, business strategy is there to reach and to satisfy the demands of the market. So our IS strategy has to enable the business to satisfy those demands. So indirectly, yes, it will be satisfying the demands of the market as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. So let me repeat the link between IS strategy and IT strategy. So at IS strategy stage, we identify what is required in order to enable the business achieve its objectives. It passes on needs and priorities to the IT strategy. The IT strategy now is going to give us how can we deliver what is required. We are going to create the infrastructure if we don't have the infrastructure already, or we are going to enhance our infrastructure so that our IS strategy can work. So IT strategy now is activity-based tasks, things that need to be done. It is supply-oriented. We are supplying resources for the IS strategy to be able to work. And it is focused on technology. What is happening in the technological world, any new ideas that we can take on board. We have to be careful because sometimes new technology will have, people will think that it's going to be the flavor of the future, it's going to be a success in the future, but sometimes this technology does not get off the ground. So instead of finding ourselves on the leading edge, we find ourselves on what we call the bleeding edge, because it is going to have the adverse effect. So the IT strategy is going to create infrastructure and services for the IS strategy to work on. And the IS strategy supports business and the business decisions and the business objectives. And as Kenneth said, the business will have the market demands on its mind. That is why it comes up with a strategy, because it wants to meet those market demands better than its competitors or before its competitors. So the IS strategy is going to enable that. Now, over the years, we have seen that organizations pass through different stages of IT growth. Perhaps not as much in modern times, because with new companies will normally be up to this stage here, either data administration stage or maturity stage, because obviously if you're going to start a new company, you're going to start off a company in as much an automated way, a digital way as possible. Now, this model was proposed in 1979 by a guy called Nolan. In fact, they were two, Nolan and Gibson. So you might ask, why are we studying this 50-year-old model? Is it still applicabilities? And I will, after I explain what the model is all about, I will explain and give you a couple of examples of how this model still applies today. Now remember that in 1979, and this was done in America, and even in America, not all organizations were computerized. Computers were still in a commercial environment at an early stage. And companies were on different stages of IT growth. Not all companies had invested to the same degree in technology. And Nolan and Gibson came up with this model, and they said initially the model was 4 stages of growth. Then it was supplemented with another 2 stages. But the concept of this model was that the first stage will be initiation. These 2 guys, Nolan and Gibson, Nolan gets all the credit, unfortunately, they did a study with a number of companies in the Fortune 500 register in America, the top companies, to see how much information technology had infiltrated the organization. And they discovered that normally, because computing was such a new venture, a new idea, a new industry, that companies were initially very skeptical to computerize their operations. So they started off with saying, let's introduce a computer system in one department. And that was initiation. Let's start off to see how it goes. If it goes well, we'll build on it. If it's a failure, we've only invested a minimal amount of capital and bye-bye to that. And normally they used to introduce a system. I wouldn't call it an information system at this stage because we were still at the data processing stage there. Normally they would introduce this system at an operational level in a department that had a lot of transaction processing, like accounting, for example, payroll. And they introduced it so that they would see the effect of computerization on that department.
Usually it's the accounts department who gets the short end of the stick in these situations.
Usually it is, but that's because most things impact on the accounts department, Ken.
That's true. That's true. I'm saying this from experience. Was when we were implementing new systems at my previous jobs, the first department to get the baptism of fire would be the accounts department, and then proceed. If things go well, proceed.
Exactly.
If things go badly, it's up to the accounts department to fix the mess.
Yeah. Right. And then once the accounts department has fixed the mess and it starts going well, then there is that level 2, the contagion. The other departments see that the computer system has given let's say the accounts department, right, some advantages. So everybody wants one now. Everybody wants a system, right? So that is why contagion. It's like flu, right? If someone goes into a classroom and he has flu, he's going to everybody is going to get it, right? There's going to be contagion, right? So in most cases, luckily enough, happily enough, in most cases, that initiation was a success. So it caught on. Everybody wanted a system. Now, because there was contagion and because there were a number of other departments besides the first department that got computerized, the internal data processing department couldn't handle all the requests coming up of this contagion. So most of these departments went off on their own bat and ordered systems from software houses, from third parties. However, there was no control. They started ordering systems right, left, and center, different machines perhaps. Remember, in those days, machines had different operating systems. Each computer manufacturer had its own operating system, proprietary operating system. There was no Unix at the time, there was no Linux, there was no Windows. And sometimes even these systems were written in different languages. So the data processing department found itself having to support various systems in various departments, written in different languages, perhaps running on different machines, running on different operating systems, and obviously they lost control. The third phase was when the DP department took control. They told the user departments, look, you can order your own systems, but these are the guidelines. It has to be written in this particular language. It has to run on this particular hardware and on this particular operating system, so that we can support one operating system, one programming language, one hardware platform, not 3 or 4. And when Nolan and Gibson did this research, they found that there were certain companies still at level 1, others at level 2, and others level 3, where they took control of the development that was being carried out. The fourth step was when they started integrating data from different systems. Right? So far,
Right? Remember that with each department getting its own system, they created a number of information silos. Every department had its own bank of information, and that information was not shared with the other departments. However, it was realized that this was not working. We need to share information. Information does not belong to accounts. Information does not belong to markets. Information belongs to the company. So we need to be able to share that information. So this is where the fourth level came, integration. Right? We started seeing systems talking to each other, information being shared between systems, so that that information is available to most of the people, if not all, within the organization. Eventually, the model was extended by another two levels. Data administration, this is where then we had central databases and data was administered centrally. And finally, companies achieving maturity. Now, as I said, this is nearly a 50-year-old model, right? Or 45, whatever, 40-year-old model. So, does it still apply today? In a way, yes. And it applies when there is new technology. For example, when email came on the scene in the 1990s, um, it wasn't just email suddenly inundating everywhere, all companies going for email. And I was at Marsovin at the time, and we were debating whether we should implement email or not. So we went through most of these stages, not all of them, but we started off with initiation. Let's get an email account for the heads of department, for the directors, so that heads of departments and directors can communicate easily with one another and with the outside world. After we started using email, suddenly there was contagion. People started saying, heads of departments started saying, why shouldn't my staff have email addresses so that I can communicate with them, so that they can communicate between themselves, so that they can communicate with our suppliers, for example, our customers. So there was contagion. Okay, we retained control because we didn't tell them, look, go and find different email service providers and everybody is on his own. We had one standard email address and then offshoots of that, right? And obviously they were integrated. Right? But that is right, the way that technology is implemented, new technology is implemented throughout an organization. Another case in point is cloud computing. Again, when cloud computing came on the scene, a lot of people were very skeptical about cloud computing. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Should we go cloud? Shouldn't we go cloud? So companies, again, took it in steps. Initiation. Okay, let's take one system and put it on the cloud and see how that goes. And once that was seen to be successful, if it was successful, then there was contagion. Right? Let's move other systems. Now, if they weren't, if the I guess department at the time right, wasn't in charge of things, it could be that different departments went to different cloud service providers, right? But then they were reeled in, right, and they were controlled and integrated so that they all use the same service and the data is all integrated. The data is administered at a central point, and then obviously we reach maturity with that technology as well. So that is why we still look at Nolan's model from 1979, because it can still apply, it may still apply in modern times when there are new technologies involved. Okay, another model here, we call this the strategic grid. Now this maps two things. First of all, it maps the strategic importance of our existing systems, and it maps them from low to high. And on the other axis, it maps the strategic importance of planned information systems, again from a low to high value. Now, if the existing systems have a high strategic importance and what we are planning also has a high strategic importance, then we know that technology and information systems are critical for business success. They already are and will remain so in the future. So basically, we're doing well because our current systems have a high strategic value and the systems that we are planning have a high strategic value as well. So the chances are that we are going to support business strategy to the full. If, on the other hand, our existing systems have a high strategic value, but what we are planning, right, has a low strategic value, we know that IT is currently crucial to business operations. However, it is not the key to the strategic development. Strategic development is not going to be based on more development from our side, which perhaps isn't such a good thing, because we need to keep technology at the forefront in order to keep the company moving in the right direction. The other two quadrants, if the existing IES have a low strategic importance, so IT has not been critical to the business so far, and our planned information systems have a high strategic importance, then the organization is looking at information technology and information systems to help it achieve its strategic objectives. So we are turning around the organization from a non-IT dependent organization to an IT dependent organization to achieve its strategy. If both of them are low, then IT is not critical to the business. It is not at the moment, and we do not see it as being critical for the future. Now, this can be a warning sign for the organization because if it cannot find ways to use technology to support its strategy, then it is going to suffer in its marketplace. It is going to suffer in its industry. Because other organizations, its competitors, are going to utilize technology and information systems. They are going to maximize the benefits that technology and information systems can give them. So they are going to go far ahead than our organization. Now, what are strategic information systems? They are the systems that are aligned with business goals and strategies. They are the systems that are going to enable business strategy. They can be used at all organizational levels, and they are more far-reaching than executive support systems. Executive support systems are those systems that are used by top management, by strategic management, in order to come up with the strategy. However, in order to enable that strategy, we need strategic information systems. They profoundly change the way business is conducted. Right? They're going to create an upheaval in the organization because they are going to change the way that the business works. Now, strategic information systems will have added importance if they stretch beyond the organization. Remember the upstream and downstream in the value chain, the upstream and downstream value chains in the value system. So if our strategic information systems can tap into upstream and downstream synergies, then they are going to be even more important. If we can link what our suppliers are doing, if we can link what our customers are doing to our strategic information systems, then the importance of these strategic information systems is going to increase. So we need to create information partnerships with customers and suppliers. And nowadays, that is something that is being felt in industry even more. We are no longer working in isolation. We are no longer, of course, we are an independent company, but we are not working in isolation. We need to work hand in hand with suppliers at one end, with customers at the other end. And if we can create these information partnerships, then we are going to benefit. It's going to be a win-win situation. All right, we've reached the end of that. Any questions?
All right, thank you.
Okay, so let's start something else. Okay, here we're going to look at actual business information systems now. Right? So far, we have looked from the organizational side, from the management side, from the strategic angle, the way that a company is structured. Right? Now we are going to have a look at information systems. Have we covered this? No way. From a functional perspective and a constituency perspective. A functional perspective is from the perspective of the individual functions within an organization. Yes?
Unfortunately, the screen is not showing. It's like you closed your
Yes,
screen.
yes, you're right, Kenneth. Thanks. I have a habit of doing that, obviously, because I'm seeing the screen. It should be up now.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to have a look at business information systems from two perspectives. The first perspective is what we call the functional perspective, the functions of the organization. Remember the four main functions: accounting and finance, sales and marketing, production and manufacturing, and human resources. Then we are going to look at information systems from a constituency perspective, from the levels of management. Right? We have those three levels of management: strategic, tactical, and operational management, and we're going to have a look at the information systems that are used by those three levels of management. Then we are going to have a look at other categories that are not related to a particular level of the business, to a particular to a particular function, or to a particular management level. There are systems that are used throughout. And there are three categories. Here on the agenda, I have two, because the third category, which is enterprise systems, is on a separate slide set. And that is where we're going to talk a lot about enterprise systems, where Carmen is getting his baptism of fire at the moment. So, looking at the functional perspective, right? One thing to bear in mind is that even if we have an enterprise resource planning system, no single system can provide all the information that an organization needs. Even if we have a massive ERP, we still need to have some satellite systems that will give us additional information. We have also seen the three levels of management and the four main functional areas. So first we are going to look at the functional areas. So we're going to look at business systems from the bottom part, so to speak, and then we are going to look at information systems from the horizontal dimension, which is the strategic, which is the constituency perspective. So going through those four main functional areas, sales and marketing, they interact very closely, right? They work hand in hand. In a smaller organization, they will probably be done by one department or even one person, but in larger organizations, they will be two different departments. Now, the responsibility of marketing is to identify customers and customer needs. What new products? do we need to put on the market? What are the gaps in the market? What can we come up with? What enhancements can we give our products to make them even more popular with the market? Right, so that's the marketing mission, advertising and promoting products and services, obviously, once we get them on stream. Then the sales mission is to contact customers, sell the products and services by taking orders, and then following up on sales, making sure that those orders are paid for. And then if there are any issues with those deliveries with the products that we have sold, then we need to follow those up. These are some examples of sales and marketing systems, Salesforce automation. Probably if you go, you might, if you're in a supermarket, you might find someone, some agent, some delivery man taking orders on a tablet, right, or in a shop, identifying what stock is missing. Point of sale systems, right, the cashier systems when you are paying for your purchases, and an online ordering system. Those are examples of systems that are used within this function. For each function, I'm going to go through the information needs of the three levels of management. So for sales and marketing at strategic level, right, management needs information to monitor trends related to new products and sales opportunities. What new products are on the market abroad, perhaps? Right? If you are in the fashion industry, what trends are trending nowadays? Right? What is popular? What do we think is going to be popular in a number of years' time, in a number of seasons' time? We monitor the performance of competitors and our performance vis-a-vis the performance of competitors. Are competitors selling more than us? Are we leading in our industry? What do we need to do to either get the lead in our industry or maintain the lead in our industry? The information requirement at tactical level is to support market research. Because through market research, we identify the needs that the market wants. Coming up with advertising and promotional campaigns, especially if we are coming up with an enhanced product or a new product, how are we going to promote it? How are we going to advertise it? How are we going to make sure that the public is aware of our new product? We need to help in making pricing decisions in conjunction with the accounts people and with the production people. Obviously, the production people are going to give input for the accounts people to work out costs of each unit. And the accounts people will need to work out the markup that we are going to put on these products. However, marketing need to keep its eyes on the market, on the ground, to see whether those prices are going to be competitive or not. We need to analyze sales performance and the performance of sales staff. Are sales going according to forecast? Are we selling as much as we had anticipated? Are we selling less? Why? How is our sales staff performing? Probably each salesperson will have a target, right? Are they reaching those targets consistently? Are the targets not being reached in a particular area by a particular salesperson, for example? Does he have family problems? Does he have a lot of competition in the area that he's selling? So, he can't really make any headway. At operational level, we need to assist in locating and contacting prospective customers. If we identify a new shop that is opening down the corner, then someone needs to go and talk to the owner. Someone needs to try to encourage the owner to start buying our products. We need to track sales, process orders, and then provide after-sales service and support. So these are the information needs for the three levels of management in marketing and sales. In manufacturing and production, here we deal with the planning, development, and maintenance of production facilities, our factories, our equipment, maintaining our equipment, making sure that we get the right throughput of our equipment. If our equipment is getting old and is not functioning as well as it should, we are going to start getting lower returns. The number of units that are being produced per hour is not going to be satisfactory. Obviously, that is then going to push the price, the cost of production up. We need to establish production goals. How much are we going to produce? What were the forecasts? At Marzovino, we had a very good system that we used to look at the past 4 weeks forecast and the actual sales for the past 4 weeks. And we used to calculate what we call the trend factor. Was the factor higher than the forecast? Was it higher than 1? So if that trend carried on, then we're going to sell more than forecast for the next 4 weeks. Do we have enough stock? If we need to produce, we need to produce more perhaps. If the trend factor was less than 1, then sales were not going to at the same pace as we had forecast. So do we need to produce more?
And how did the company forecast?
Pardon, Kenneth?
Oh, sorry, Gary had a question. We spoke together at the same time. Go ahead, Gary.
Thank you. Okay, and how did the company conduct its forecasting then, in that case?
First of all, the company used to come up with its sales with its annual forecast sometime in November, December. All right, and the company used to come up with. I used to contribute in quite a lot in that exercise. We used to take the actual sales for the past year and then try to extrapolate. Next year, for example, we knew that there were certain products that were seasonal in summer because of tourism, the classic wines, for example. Right? So then we used to say, okay, what do we think tourism is going to be like next year? Is it going to be better than this year? So the chances are that we are going to sell more. And obviously the forecasts, you can never be 100% accurate on your forecasts. But we used to create a week-by-week forecast for each product. And then this trend factor, we use the trend factor to adjust these forecasts for the next 10 weeks, for example. So if the past 4 weeks showed us that we were selling more than forecast, then the chances were that in the next 10 weeks, we were going to sell more than we had forecast for those 10 weeks. All right, so we used to adjust the forecasts accordingly. However, adjust them temporarily, right? Because the main forecast that would have been approved by the board, the forecast that would have been set in November, December, and approved by the board, we could never touch those. Right? Those were cast in stone. But for production purposes, right, we used to uplift or downgrade those forecasts according to the trend. It doesn't make sense to say, look, we forecast that we want to sell 100 cases in the next 2 weeks. When you know that, right, if the current trend continues, those sales are going to be 150 cases. So unless you produce to have 150 cases in stock, you're going to lose sales. On the other hand, if you know that the actual sales are less than forecast, there's no point in saying, but we had forecast 100 cases for the next 2 weeks, so we produce 100 cases. But if chances are that we're only going to sell 80 cases, why produce another 20 cases and then perhaps you have to sell them off cheaply at a discount or throw them away? Does that answer your question, Floyd?
It's Gary.
Sorry, Gary.
No problem. So insofar as Marzovino's IT system is concerned for forecasting, the IT system was important, or the IS actually, was important in supplying the numbers to yourself, for example, who would conduct the forecasting. Okay, because I thought the system was used to forecast automatically, for example. That's why.
No, the forecasts were done by a team of people. Obviously, there was the chief financial officer involved. There was the marketing manager involved. Right?
Exactly, but the data they had at hand would have been yielded from the IS system, probably.
Yes. Now the data would have been the current the data for the current year, because obviously we didn't have data for the next year.
For sure.
And then manually working out forecast for next year. We did a lot of modeling with IES systems. We used to say if tourism is going to go up by 10%, for example, what effect is that going to have on these wines?
And you play with the numbers, okay.
Yes, and you play with the numbers. You do what if scenarios. Okay.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Kenneth, you had a question yourself?
Yes. No, essentially, when I'm looking at this with regards to manufacturing and production functional areas, one of the things that I believe should also be taken into consideration is the waste element, where you would have in the actual process. For example, I used to work with Delaru. So the waste that was generated by the factory, there was an actual project that it was done in such a manner to reuse most of the waste and recycle it into the same schedule. That would create higher efficiency. The more waste you use, the less costs you would be incurring.
Of course.
And as well as there were actual targets set for the waste itself.
Yes. In fact, not targets set for the waste, but there would be an acceptable level of wastage. We had something similar at Marsovin and at Farzens with spillage. All right, because when you are dealing with liquids, the risks of spillage are very, very high. All right, so there was an acceptable factor. I think it was 4%. Right? If you lose 4% of your liquids because they are spilled, that is acceptable. If it is higher than 4%, then people might be in trouble. All right, but yes, that's a good point. Yes, with manufacturing, obviously, and we try to keep rejects as low as possible. Even in manufacturing, if you have when you are testing the products that you have produced, if you have a high reject rate, that is going to impact your cost of production, and that is not going to be acceptable. All right, so yes, that is also part of the manufacturing and production, taking care of spillages, wastage, defects, things like that. Okay?
All right, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Kenny. Thanks for pointing it out. All right, so again, other responsibilities in this functional area: acquisition, storage, and availability of production materials. You have to make sure that you have production materials available. Otherwise, if you can't produce, you are going to lose sales. And then scheduling equipment, facilities, labor, etc. in your production plans. Some systems used in manufacturing and production: computer-aided design, in designing our products, and computer integrated manufacturing. Sometimes it is also called computer assisted manufacturing. They are the same thing. Right? So basically it is robotics and automation of our production lines. Information needs in this function. At strategic level, we need information to come up with new products. And now that information, most of that information is going to come out from the marketing research and what marketing feel that the market needs. However, even the manufacturing people themselves, product enhancements, for example, they might know that there could be certain enhancements on the products that will make those products more popular on the market. Capacity planning. If we are going to plan to produce new products, do we have enough capacity in our factories? Are our machines already working flat out? Perhaps 3-4 shifts? So there is no spare capacity? Because if we are going to increase the forecast, if we are going to increase sales, increase production, we need to have spare capacity that can handle that increased production. The siting of plants. If we are going to build a new factory, where is that factory going to be built? Now, bear in mind sometimes these multinationals. Which country shall we build a new factory in? Where is there, for example, lower labor costs, right? Lower material costs, transport. If we are going to produce in some faraway place, how are we going to get our products across to our markets? The tactical level, sourcing of raw materials. Are we happy with the quality of raw materials that we are getting? Can we get better quality raw materials, perhaps at the same price? Can we get raw materials sooner perhaps from suppliers who are closer to our base? Production planning. Sometimes, especially if we are going to use the same machine to create different products, right? How are we going to plan production? Which are the products that are going to take priority? At the operational level, production control, the throughput of our machines. If we should be getting 50,000 units per day out of our machine, are we getting those 50,000 units? Or is that machine suffering from a lot of wear and tear? Perhaps maintenance is not being done regularly. Perhaps maintenance is not being done properly. And then the inspection of finished goods. This is where Kenneth suggested, right, the wastage that then can be reused, right, in other production runs, right, to reduce wastage and to reduce the cost of production. Finance and accounting. Most of you, I think, would lecture me about this. But the distinction between finance and accounting, the finance department is responsible for managing the firm's financial assets because we need to maximize profits. It's responsible for managing the capitalization of the firm. If we have projects planned for next year, how are we going to get that capital? Is that capital already surplus within our organization? Do we have that capital available? Do we need to go to banks for loans or overdrafts? Do we need to get the shareholders to put in more money into the company? Or do we need to go public? Do we need to issue bonds, for example? And especially if there's a large project coming up and you need some massive capital. It is also responsible for issuing management accounting reports. First of all, they are important for the shareholders to know how the company is performing, and especially if the company is quoted on a stock exchange, because we have to show how advantageous it is, how profitable it is for prospective shareholders to buy our shares. The accounting department is responsible for maintaining and managing the firm's financial records. These are the day-to-day flow of funds, receipts, payments, things like that. Systems that are used in finance and accounting. A financial accounting system, which is normally split into a number of ledgers: the purchase ledger, sales ledger, the general ledger, and the assets register. A management accounting system that gives us the statistics and a number of management reports that are the real reporting function. And in certain industries, we need to have activity-based costing systems. For example, in telecommunications at Maltacom, we had to implement an activity-based costing system because the company had 4 different branches of revenue, and they had to be kept separate. The costs on one line, the costs on fixed line, for example, could not be passed on to the mobile line, right? Because there were agreements with other operators that the sharing of revenue with other operators was based on the company's costs. So the costs had to be costed by activity, not throughout the whole organization as one lump. The information needs for finance and accounting at strategic level, again, we need to establish investment goals. What capital projects are going to be out there in the next 5 years? What level of investment do we need? How are we going to cover that investment? How are we going to get that capitalization? Long-range forecasting. At tactical level, we need to control financial resources. And at operational level, we need to track the day-to-day flow of funds. Human resources, it is responsible for the company's workforce, recruitment of staff, staff well-being, making sure that staff are paid at the end of the month, otherwise we're going to have problems on our hands, keeping personnel records, when people have joined the company, their progress throughout the company, their promotions, any disciplinary action taken against them, any additional courses that they have undertaken since they were recruited. Right? So all these records, union negotiations. Right? So that is part of the responsibility of HR. Some systems used by human resources, a personnel system keeping the details of each and every employee that we have, a time and attendance system so that we can pass those details to the payroll system so that people can be paid for normal hours, for overtime hours if they are eligible for overtime, bonuses, things like that. Obviously reducing tax, reducing NI payments. Now the information needs at strategic level, we need capacity planning. Now we've seen this term for manufacturing and production, but in this case, the capacity planning relates to the human resources. In the next 5 years, how much more staff do we need? Do we need to shed staff? Do we need to reskill staff? Right? What skills do our staff need to have in the next 5 years? Do we have those skills already internally? How can we achieve those skills? By recruiting people with those skills or by retraining our staff? At tactical level, staff recruitment. We are losing staff, what are we going to do? Are we going to replace people or are we going to share the load of the people that have left through the others that remain? Allocating resources and then staff development, retraining of staff. At the operational level, we need to control employees on leave. How many employees are currently doing the research on finches, for example, right? Or going off hunting. Staff discipline. If there are any issues between staff members, right, or issues of staff members, then we need to keep track of discipline. Right, any questions on that? Let's take a short break. I make it, it's 3 minutes past 7, so back at 10 minutes past 7, okay?
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to resume.
Okay, sir.
All right.
Right, so now we're going to have a look at information systems from what we call the constituency perspective, because the functional perspective does not show us how systems help management. So we are going to look at systems from the 3 levels of management. Now, the first thing that we're going to have a look at are the information attributes for each level of management. As we were going along with those 4 functional aspects, with the functional perspective, we were looking at the information needs of the 3 levels of management. Here I have extracted and compared the attributes that the information needs to meet those 3 levels of management. Now, the first 2, structure and source, are very, very closely linked. So let's look at source first. The source for information for operational management is purely internal, from our own systems. The source for tactical level is mostly internal. The bulk of the information is from our own systems. However, we supplement that with some external information. The source for strategic management information is mostly external. Here we are trying to preempt what is going to happen in the next 5 years. So we don't have that information internally, we don't have any data internally. So most of it has to be external data. Now, based on the source, the structure is going to be, for operation, is going to be structured. The fact that it is purely internal gives us full control over this information. So we can structure it to be always in the same manner, in the same format. With tactical information requirements, because it is mostly internal, it is mostly structured as well. The external part is going to be unstructured. The external information that we are going to get, we don't have control over that. So we can't control the format, we can't control the structure. In the same way, right, for strategic information, it is unstructured. We are getting most of the information externally from industry reports, for example, that are published by audit firms. So we do not have control over the way that they're going to format it, the way that they're going to structure it. 1 year, the industry report might be in a particular structure, the next year it might be in a different structure. The frequency of information for operational, it is daily. Right? We need daily information. We need to know how many units we have produced. We need to know how many orders we have collected. We need to know how many payments we have received. We need to know how many goods we have received from our suppliers. For tactical management, the frequency is on a regular basis. Normally, it is weekly, monthly, quarterly, etc. Right? For example, a weekly sales report comparing the weekly sales against forecast sales, perhaps past 4 weeks against past 4 weeks forecasts, cumulative year to date against year to date forecast. Now, with strategic, there is no regular basis. The information is asked for as needed. Right? Whenever talks of a strategic nature are going to take place. The level of detail with operation, it is a high level of detail, not just knowing how many orders we have received, but who are the customers who have placed orders, what orders by product have we received. So that is a high level of detail. At tactical level, we don't need such a high level of detail. We need aggregated, we need totals, we need summaries. Total sales by product, total sales by customer category perhaps, total sales by salesman, total sales by sales area. So it is aggregated information. At strategic level, it is not even aggregated, it is distilled. We need to extract the essence of information, the essence of data. What is that information used for? It is used for day-to-day control at operational level, it is used to monitor progress at tactical level, and it is used for strategic planning at strategic level. And that information is produced by different information systems. At operational level, it is produced by a transaction processing system, a TPS. At tactical level, it is produced by either a management information system, an MIS, or a decision support system, DSS. And at strategic level, by an executive support system, or an ESS. Now, decision support systems may also be used in this level here. So decision support system should really straddle these two columns here. Again, these acronyms. So I think I had suggested, I don't know whether I have done this already, but if you can keep a glossary of these acronyms, it will help you, because information systems is full of these acronyms. Sometimes in an exam paper, you will be given just TPS. It will not be spelled out as transaction processing system. So, it's better if you are familiar with these terms yourselves. Now, we're going to have a look at these 4 different types of systems in a bit more detail. So we start off with a transaction processing system. So a transaction is a business event that generates or modifies data. Right? It is something that is an exchange between 2 persons or 2 departments, and it generates or modifies data. For example, point of sale transactions. Right? You are at the supermarket checking out, and be careful here, because each time that the cashier is scanning an item, that is a transaction in itself. Because that transaction is going to be used to modify stock data. And then at the end, when the cashier tots up your bill, then that is a financial transaction, because you are going to pay, right? It's going to modify your bank balance, and it's going to modify the supermarket's bank balance. Other examples, airline bookings, tracking parcels, credit card payments, those are all transactions. Now, transactions could be internal transactions as well. Issuing raw materials to production. All right, those are transactions as well. We are reducing the amount of stock that we have by raw material, and then eventually at the end of production, we are increasing the balance of finished goods that we have. Now, some detail about a TPS. A transaction processing system will collect and store data about routine transactions. These are transactions that take place every day, hundreds and thousands of transactions. Now, through a TPS, we answer routine day-to-day questions. Who bought that item? Right? Or where did that item go if it was released from stock? It tracks the flow of transactions. Right? We have received money, it has gone from one person to another, and then it has gone to the bank. The tasks are highly structured and well defined. Normally, the tasks are run-of-the-mill tasks. The processes are always the same. They are well defined, and if there are different people doing the same types of transactions, they are going to take the same steps. The processes are going to be the same. A TPS is central to business operation. If the transaction processing system fails, it can lead to company failure. You can imagine a supermarket that has a power cut, and they can't operate their point of sale machines, so they either have to make manual bills and give out manual back receipts, but you can imagine what a problem that is, if that is going to carry on for a number of hours or a number of days. A transaction processing system is the source of information for management information systems. As we shall see, management information systems do not have their own transaction capture. Management information systems do not capture transactions. They work on transactions that are input into the system via a TPS. Now, a TPS may be real-time or batch. Talking there about MIS as well, here we are talking rather theoretically, because normally if you look at a particular system, you can't say this is a transaction processing system, this is a management information system, because in many cases, a system is a combination of the two of them. So, for example, if we take an inventory management system, or a stock control system as it is also known, that is both a transaction processing system and management information system. The transaction processing system part is that it keeps track of goods that are received, of raw materials and components that are received, or goods that are produced, goods that are sold. So those are transactions. What are we receiving? What are we selling? What are we issuing internally? Now, the management information system side of it is because there are reports that give us management information. Right? For example, slow-moving stock. Right? If we are manufacturing and there are certain stock items, there are certain products that are slow movers, that are not that popular with our customers, right? Should we keep on producing them? That slow-moving stock, is it going to expire soon? Do we need to move it by giving it at a discount, selling it at a discount? Has it expired and we need to destroy it? Now we will also get certain information about stock items that need to be reordered. For every stock item, we would normally have a minimum level. How much do we need to keep of this as a minimum? When it falls below this level, we need to reorder. There's no point in letting it reach zero and then reordering if, for example, it's going to take 4 weeks to replenish that stock. So we must order in good time to make sure that in those 4 weeks until we receive the new stock, we still have stock to use in our production. Okay, so systems, right, are normally, they can't be bracketed, this is a TPS, this is an MIS. In many cases, systems are a combination of TPS and MIS. Now, I mentioned that transaction processing systems may be real-time or batch, and the distinction between those is that batch processing systems are those systems where individual transactions are collected and stored, but they are not updated immediately. They are updated, processed at a later stage, at the end of the day, perhaps, at the end of the month with payroll. And real-time processing is where each transaction is processed as it arises immediately. Internet banking. If you go into internet banking and you pay a bill, right, obviously you say pay it now, right? That is going to be processed immediately. Your account is going to be debited immediately. That money is going to move to your supplier's account, to the payee's account immediately. With batch processing, we are accumulating transactions and then processing them at a particular point in time. Now, obviously, real-time processing is much more convenient, especially in a banking application, for example, because we need to have updated balances as quickly as possible. Right? As soon as a transaction is raised, we need to make sure that the balance is updated. But in certain systems like payroll, we don't really need to have real-time processing. Our time and attendance is going to be real time. If you're clocking in and clocking out, the system is going to capture the time you clocked in or clocked out immediately. But the time and attendance record doesn't need to be processed by a payroll system in real time, right, to calculate how much you have earned. Because payroll is going to be issued at the end of the month, at the end of the fortnight, perhaps. All right, so that is going to be processed in batch form. Now, an MIS system, management information system, it provides middle management with pre-programmed reports. Pre-programmed reports. Normally, when we are analyzing the requirements for a system, we ask management what reports it would need, what regular reports it would need, a weekly sales report, a monthly sales report, for example. What information do you want on that report? So we program those reports. And that is the function, one of the functions of a management information system. It also gives online access to the organization's current performance and historical records. Normally, we keep 2 years data in our information systems. And we keep 2 years data because in our pre-programmed reports, we do a lot of comparisons with previous years. For example, a monthly sales report, if we are comparing the sales in September, we compare the actual sales of this September against what we had forecast. And we also compare it to last year's sales, because that would be a good indicator to show us whether we are increasing sales or we are reducing sales. MIS use simple routines such as summaries and comparisons, comparing against forecasts, comparing against last year's. Right? They serve the functions of planning, controlling, and forecasting. They obtain information by processing data from transaction processing systems. Now, it is important to note that MIS will provide facts, not solutions. We have to find those solutions. We have to analyze the data, the information that is being given to us by the MIS. We need to be in a position, we need to have enough experience, enough knowledge to be able to interpret the data and then to decide on solutions based on the data. Now, this shows how we go from transaction processing systems to management information systems. Here we have 3 different transaction processing systems, each with their own data files, and we combine those files together, right, into MIS files, and the management information system creates those pre-programmed reports that are given to middle management. Now, another type of system that is used by tactical and, as I said, sometimes strategic management is a decision support system. Now, with management information systems, we help managers make routine business decisions. That is why they are pre-programmed reports, because the decisions that are taken on that information are routine decisions. Are we above forecast? Are we below forecast? Do we need to sell at a discount? Do we need to come up with promotional material, with promotional events? With decision support systems, we help managers make non-routine business decisions. Not decisions that are run-of-the-mill, not decisions that are normal decisions, decisions that we normally take. These are decisions that we need to take sometimes. Right? Decisions that are not run-of-the-mill decisions, decisions that are not routine decisions. They focus on problems that are unique, rapidly changing, and we cannot easily specify them in advance. Because if they're going to be routine decisions, we can specify them in advance, then they're going to be pre-programmed reports. But in this case, right, they are not easily specified, so we need to handle them as they arise. With decision support systems, we use internal information from transaction processing systems and also from management information systems. However, we supplement that internal information with external information. For example, getting product prices of our competitors. And then they use a variety of models to analyze this data. They do simulation, the calculations that depending on tentative assumptions. What happens if we raise our selling price by 5%? What happens if we reduce our selling price by 5%? Optimization. They determine optimal decisions based on certain criteria. What would be the best thing to do? Reduce our selling price by 5%, but increase sales by 15%, for example, or raise our selling price by 5%, but reduce sales by 10%. Right? So optimization, what is the best way forward? And a special type of decision support systems are expert systems. Right? They support professionals who are faced with complex situations. Right? For example, a general practitioner will not be an expert in all of the maladies around the world, so he might tag into an expert system if he has a patient in front of him that this patient is suffering from something that the doctor has never really come across. Perhaps he's suffering from malaria, for example. Right? So the expert system will lead the doctor through the different symptoms that the patient is showing, right? And it can lead the doctor to a particular conclusion. Now, the difference between management information systems and decision support systems, especially when we talk about developing such a system. If we are going to develop a management information system, the philosophy is to provide structured information to the end users. We already know what the end users want. So the objective is to give them structured information. With decision support systems, because we do not know what the users are going to require, the philosophy is to provide them with an integrated tool, data, models, and language. Right? Something that they can play around with in order to come up with their own solution. How are we going to analyze the requirement? With management information systems, we can identify the information requirements up front because the manager will normally tell us, I need a weekly sales report, I need a monthly sales report, I want this data on this report. I want to compare the data to forecasts. I want to compare the data to last year's sales. I want to compare week by week. I want to compare 4 weekly intervals. I want to compare from start of year. So we already have those information requirements. The way we analyze the system for a decision support system is we need to establish what tools are needed in the decision process, what tools is the user going to need in order to come up with his ad hoc report. The design in management information systems, we delivered the system based on frozen requirements. It is easy to identify requirements, so we are going to deliver the system based on those requirements. With a decision support system, the design has to be iterative. We have given the tools to the user, but they might not have been the right tools the first time that he went to use the system. So we need to refine those tools. Okay, what is lacking? What can we make better? So it is iterative. Again, next time round, might not get it 100%. Right? You might say, look, there is still something lacking. We still need to add something else. So it needs to be repeated. It needs to be iterated. Now, executive support systems, right, they are used by top management to address strategic issues and long-term trends. Because with strategic management, they do medium and long-term planning, normally 3 to 5 year planning. they need to have easy to use graphic interfaces, right? So that it will be easier to control and easier to use. And here we are dealing with non-routine decisions that require skill and judgment. Normally, the decisions are taken based on hunches. I think this is what is going to happen. Right? So gut feeling, right? Nothing really tangible, nothing that really you have such a lot of information that you can really make a um, uh, an accurate or right, a decision that will be 100% the best decision. Again, they are based on information from internal and external sources. And with executive support systems, we filter, compress, and track critical data. Now, because they are designed for senior managers who in many cases don't have a lot of experience with IS, they need to have very advanced graphic software so that we can present information in graphs and data from many sources. And executive support systems help in answering the following questions, the following important questions for an organization. In what business should we be? Are we in the right business? Are we doing the right things? Is our business, is our industry still a profitable industry? Or is it being run down? What are our competitors doing? Are they far ahead of us? Are they behind us? Are they coming up with new products? What new acquisitions would protect us from cyclical business swings? Cyclical business swings, and profits are always swaying from one way to another, right? Depending on a lot of factors. So if we think that our industry is going to pass through a bad patch, could we acquire another company in a different industry perhaps that is going to be profitable, so the additional profits that we are going to make from the new acquisition are going to make up for the loss of profits or the loss of earnings in our traditional industry? Which units should we sell to raise cash if we are a group of companies? And we have one company that is in an industry that isn't doing so well. Can we sell it off so that we can raise cash that we can invest in other companies that are doing better, that are in more lucrative industries? So these are the type of questions that are being asked frequently at strategic level by top management. And this is just a matrix of those four types of systems and combined together into one slide, into one comparative there, into one matrix there. Any questions before we look at categories that are now? We looked at information systems from two levels, from two perspectives. So we've seen what is used in particular functions. We've seen what is used at particular management levels. Now we're going to have a look at systems that are not linked to any particular level, to any particular function, but they are used in any level and in any function of the business. And we're going to talk about office information systems, also known as office automation systems, collaboration and communication systems, and enterprise applications. Enterprise applications are in a different slide set to this. It's called 5B. So we start off with office information systems. As I said, we also call them OAS, office automation systems, and they facilitate the everyday information processing tasks in an organization. And these are tools like Excel, Microsoft Access, Word, PowerPoint. And I am sure that you have used these tools yourselves. Now, another category are collaboration and communication systems. We need to communicate and collaborate with other people, with our colleagues and with people that are employees of our partners, of other organizations, of our suppliers, of our customers. Right? And these systems will help people work together by exchanging or sharing information. And we're going to have a look at this list. I'm going to go through it because I'm going to go into a bit more detail. First of all, teleconferencing. So teleconferencing tools make it possible to hold same time, different place meetings. A telephone conversation is normally between two persons. Sometimes we need to get more than two persons to talk to each other on a single conference. So the basic teleconferencing flavor is audio conferencing. And this covers a single telephone call with 3 or more people participating from different locations. Now, telephone companies would give you a particular number plus a password if you ask for an audio conference line. So they give you this telephone number and the password, then you pass the telephone number and password to the persons who need to participate on the conference. Obviously, that line will be available from at a particular date, from a particular time to a particular time. And when the conference needs to start, all the participants will need to key in that telephone number, key in that password, and they will join the conference. Now, obviously, we need to limit the number of people on an audio conference because if there are 15 people on an audio conference, then there are going to be a lot of cross-talking and interruptions on the line, and it's going to be like the Tower of Babel. One level up from audio conferencing is an audiographic conference. So it extends audio conferencing by including graphical material that is shown to the participants at the same time. Normally, the person who is running the conference, who is controlling the conference, he makes his laptop screen, PC screen, available to the other participants. There is special software at Go. We used to use software called GoToMeeting, right? And you can get the other participants in the conference to view your screen. You can have a presentation, you can have a project plan, right? And you control your screen. The other people can't control your screen. They can only view your screen. And then the third level of teleconferencing is a full video conference where people can also see each other using display screens. Right, so this is a very good collaborative tool, communication tool. It keeps people close together without, first of all, having to travel to different countries to hold meetings. And especially over the past year and a half, because of the pandemic, this was even more important and even more utilized. Systems like email, voicemail, and unified messaging, they are very popular tools, although even email now is losing its popularity because a lot of people are using WhatsApp, Discord itself. They have a number of advantages as well as issues. Right? So there are certain issues, especially with email, for example, in the social context. People become lazy to communicate. They send emails, they send WhatsApp messages to each other rather than going to another office to talk to a colleague. Sometimes even to someone 3 desks away. Right? We just sent him an SMS, we just sent him an instant message. There is danger of misinterpretation because we are so used to being very short and abrupt with these messages, right, that sometimes people misinterpret that abruptness to rudeness rather than to the fact that everybody is very busy. You are going into a meeting with your CEO, for example, you have a couple of minutes and you need to send an urgent email to someone. right? And you forget all about the niceties, you just write the important things that you need to write and you send it. The person who receives it doesn't know that you did that in a hurry. And this looks like an order. Who does he think he is? He's not my manager. Right? I'm not going to do this. He can go to hell. Right? So, because there is no body language, no intonation, and no expressions, right? It could give rise to misunderstandings. It can short circuit power relationships. Right? For example, a direct communication between someone who is testing a system, finding issues, finding bugs, and communicating directly with the developer and keeping you as project manager out of the loop. Right? So you know that someone is doing user testing. You're not seeing any messages passing through and fro, no emails passing. So we say, oh, things must be going very well. Right? The people who are testing are not finding any issues. Otherwise, they would be reporting them. But you're not aware that they are passing those emails directly to developers and keeping you out of the loop. There are problems of privacy and confidentiality. Sometimes we pick up the wrong person from a list of contacts in our address list. And we could be sending an email to the wrong person. We think we're sending it to Mr. A, but we're sending it to Mr. B, who has the same name, but is in a different company. You might be passing confidential information, for example, to the wrong person. Electronic junk mail. Although we have software that identifies junk mail and sends it to a junk folder, unfortunately, sometimes it also sends good messages, important messages to a junk folder. In fact, sometimes when you register with a website, will tell you an email has been sent, and you don't receive the email, check your junk folder as well because it might have been redirected. Worms and viruses that tag on to emails. Right? This term that we've already met, information overload. Sometimes we do not make the right use of email and we copy too many people on the same message. Do we need to copy 40 people? Some people think that by copying half the organization, they're going to look important. Right? But you're filling the mailboxes of people with unnecessary email. You go out on leave, you come back, you find a lot of emails in your mailbox. You don't have time to go through all of them, so you archive all of them. And you missed the really important ones. Now, groupware, right, software and related procedures that help teams work together by allowing them to share information and controlling internal workflows. You have an order that is going to go to 3 or 4 different people. Right? So workflow management makes sure that the first person who needs to work on this document, once he has finished from it, it automatically passes to the next person so that the flow keeps on going until the whole process is finished. And again, sharing documents and artifacts. So these are important in things like project management. A very important groupware tool is scheduling group meetings. If you want to set a meeting with 4 or 5 people, you have access to their calendars, and as long as they keep their calendars up to date, you can find a slot that is available to everybody. Before we had this facility, you had to send an email to 5 people suggesting a meeting on Tuesday afternoon, for example. And 3 of those 5 people will reply immediately, tell you, yes, I'm available, but the other 2 are going to take 2 or 3 days to tell you that, yes, they're okay. And then when you set up the meeting, the initial 3 people who had said they're okay will tell you, now we're no longer free, because we thought that the meeting was not going to be held, and we've taken another appointment. Right? So by having a visibility of everybody's calendar, you can schedule group meetings in a much more efficient way. Accessing and retrieving data from shared repositories. Shared documents, so you can access and retrieve these documents, and the software will only allow one person to retrieve data or documents from these repositories in an editing mode. If someone is going to edit this document, other people cannot edit that document. The document is logged for editing by the first person who has taken it out in edit mode. The document is still available in read-only mode to anybody else, but only one person can edit that document at one point. News groups and forums so that people can share. If they have common interests, they can share information. Workflow applications such as logistics, request approval. Sometimes people in different levels of the organization will have different levels of authorizations. So if a person, for example, wants to buy a personal computer, he's going to submit a request to his manager. If it is within his manager's discretionary limit, his manager can approve that. If it is outside the discretionary limit of that manager might recommend it and pass it on to his manager. And if it is within his discretionary level, then that manager, right, if he agrees with the recommendation, then he will order it. Okay, so these are things that facilitate our everyday life. Intranets and extranets, we've already seen this somewhere else. So an intranet is private communication network, which is accessible by employees, contractors, etc. And it will have certain information like corporate news, policies, templates, contact details, forums, job descriptions, which are for internal use. And then an extranet will be giving part of that intranet accessible, making it accessible to authorized outside users. For example, internet banking. Right? The bank will have its own intranet where people will have their own levels of and information that is viewable, but customers who are authorized to have internet banking are logged into the extranet where they can view their own information. And then the world at large can go into the internet via the internet and look at the bank's website. Group decision support systems, again, these are becoming quite common and quite useful. In a number of organizations, decisions are not taken by an individual, but by a group. And these are certain systems that assist group work. For example, electronic questionnaires. If you are organizing a meeting, you can send a questionnaire, an electronic questionnaire to the participants, asking them what they need to see on the agenda, right? So that you know what needs to be discussed. Electronic brainstorming tools. Individuals can either simultaneously and anonymously contribute ideas on the topics of the meeting. You circulate the topics that have come out of the electronic questionnaire and you ask people what they can contribute, because obviously if they can contribute certain things prior to the meeting, then you're not going to spend a lot of time during the meeting itself trying to come up with certain information. Idea organizers, again, they facilitate the organized integration and synthesis of common ideas. Right? If there are items that have been flagged by more than 2-3 people, right, you can put them at the top of the agenda because they are the more common items that people want to discuss. Tools for voting or setting priorities. If you know that you have an hour's meeting, but you have so many items to discuss that you can only go through 3 or 4 items, then you can ask the participants to prioritize the items that they want to see for discussion, so that that hour can be spent in the best possible way. You can maximize the use of that hour. Other tools like policy formation tools, they give structured support. For example, templates for policy statements, templates for documents, so that documents issued by people from different departments will have the same structure, especially if they're going to the outside world, if they're going to suppliers, if they're going to customers. It gives a very good impression of the organization if we standardize our reports, right, our communication with the outside world. And group dictionaries are agreements on definitions of words. Sometimes in an industry we find a lot of jargon and things are be called in different things. For example, an inventory management system or a stock management system. Right? So we could have group dictionaries that say, look, when we talk about inventory management, it means stock management. When we talk about stock keeping unit, it is the same as item code, as product code. Right? Customer and client are normally interchangeable. Okay, okay, we can finish this off. With social networks, right, they are interactive computer-mediated technologies that allow people to share information, ideas, etc. Right, things like Facebook, Twitter, which are purely social, or they could be special interest groups like LinkedIn that includes career interests, so people can identify with and link with people who have similar careers who are doing the same type of work. Wikis, they are collaborative tools that allow group members to contribute and modify one or more pages of related materials. So again, these are collaboration tools. They allow people to, especially people working in a project, for example, the project team, so that they can collaborate and build a community within the group so that everybody will have access to the same documents, and especially when these documents are updated, everybody will have access to the most recent version. So essentially a wiki is a web page with an open editing system. Obviously, it is you control the people who can edit those documents and who can read those documents. It is not open to the whole world. Virtual worlds, they are computer simulated environments, and they may be populated by many users who will explore the virtual world and participate in activities and communicate with others. And companies like IBM use virtual worlds to hold online meetings, training sessions, and make sure that their employees can communicate and collaborate with each other. Right? And IBM has its virtual universe community, VUC, that is used internally